Out here getting a new garden spot ready. What do I spot but another lesser well-known edible, a well-known plant, but not particularly always known as being an edible plant, the stinging nettle. This is pretty easily identified. Looks very similar to kind of a big gangly mint plant. I imagine anybody in the Northeast that lives in a rural area is quite familiar with why it's called the stinging nettle. There's little barbs on the stems and the leaf stems that if they touch your skin, you get a pretty noticeable stinging sensation that can actually stick with you quite a while. But as soon as I get done working on the garden, we're going to harvest some of these and see if we can eat them. Pretty lush nettle patch. I'm going to try something a little new today for harvesting nettles. Now these nettles here are only a few inches high, so what we're going to do is harvest just the growing tips, which is just basically a cluster of pretty tender leaves. But I'm going to try something new. Another YouTuber had posted a video at some point on how to harvest them by hand without getting stung, and I actually experimented with that a little bit earlier, and I'm going to try it. In the past, I've always worn gloves and snipped them off with a pair of pruners so as not to get stung by them, but I watched the video. I tried a couple earlier while I was weeding some out of the garden, and it seemed like it worked all right, so we're going to give it a shot, harvesting stinging nettles with your bare hand without getting stung. We'll see how that goes. Okay, I'll give you a quick rundown. I'll post a link to the actual video I watched too, but you see the fine hairs. I don't know if the camera will pick them up, but they kind of go in a downward direction, so if you sort of push the hairs down as you pick them, they don't sting you, and it appears to be true. So here we go. Yeah, there's one. I would say that method works. Now, for when the plants get bigger, it's a little different, because generally what most people do is they'll harvest the whole plant, and they're like 1.5 feet tall, and then they they just pick the leaves off, and then set the stems aside for something else, or compost them, or discard them, or whatever. But when they're this size, it's best to, this is how I prefer to get them. You get just those tender tops, and there's no waste, and they just grow new tops, so you can go pick them again. Later on, when they are bigger, I'll probably do a video on harvesting the larger ones, and then using the stems to make natural cordage with, but that'll be later on. Okay, so got a fair amount of nettles there. I'm using that method. I actually did get a couple minor stings, not from the ones I was picking so much as inadvertently touching the ones next to them, but nothing major. Just not really a full-on sting, even just a little tingle, because I think I just didn't touch it enough for it to fully do its thing. So I would say that harvest method is definitely worth doing. Personally, myself, I don't like wearing a glove. I like to be able to kind of have that tactile feel of what I'm doing, and I'm going to use this method on small early growth nettles some from now on, I think. And now to go on to processing and cooking our nettles. And we're going to cook our nettles. They're kind of similar in one way of the rinsing process as the dandelions, except you know, instead of rinsing them to get rid of the bitterness, you know, rinsing them to get rid of you know, the chemical that causes the stain, you know. But we don't have to do the repeated boiling method. There's you know, several ways people do this. Some people just rinse them with cold water 2 or 3 times and call them good. I mean, some people do that and eat them raw. I'd rather cook them. What I'm going to do this time is rinse them a couple times with cold water, and then I'm going to parboil them and then drain that water, and then you know, go ahead and refill them with water and cook them all the way till they're done. And I do it that way because I've tried the method, rinsing them 2-3 times with cold water, and for me anyways, I mean, maybe I wasn't as thorough as other people, but they still could sting. So I rinse them a couple of times in cold and parboil them. And that seems to do the trick. So we'll add our cold water. Make sure we're getting good coverage there. Swish them around. Nice and rinsed here for our first cold water rinse. And now we'll discard that water. And now fill them back up for the second rinse. Nice cool water again. Swish it around. And I'm just going to let them sit in this water for a minute while I get the fire going. And then we'll parboil them. Probably give them a good 6-8 minutes. Now we'll discard the second cold rinse water. And we'll fill it up for the parboiling stage. Water. Make sure they're all down in there. And we'll set it on the fire. You know, again, you know, like with the fiddlehead video, you know, I'm trying to replicate as best as possible, you know, doing this in the field. So methods are a little crude but effective. So once these start boiling, as I said, we'll give them, I'll estimate approximately 6 minutes. We'll drain them, fill them back up, and then we'll cook them and we'll eat them. Now, nettles, like any other wild green, are just chock right full of vitamins and minerals. And the wild greens, like the nettles or the dandelion greens and some of the other greens, the great thing about those, from a survival and preparedness standpoint, is these are coming up before your cultivated plants. So in a survival preparedness situation, before you could plant a garden and survive on your homestead, winter's just over. It's nothing's coming up yet. So these greens, they just pop right up on their own, a good month before you can even get your first seed in the ground. So it's the perfect thing in a just a homestead situation. They're great, but in a post SHTF situation, even more so, because by April, May, your storage for the winter may very well be depleted, and these are the things you'll be eating. So wild greens. At the end of the video, I'll post some of the nutritional benefits of specifically of nettles, to just give you an idea of what's in them. But they're definitely, from a survival preparedness standpoint, the greens are vitally important. Okay, so we're at about our 6-minute mark now. So I'm going to discard this water, fill it up one more time, and we're going to cook them till they're ready to eat. So our stinginess should be gone now with the parboiling, and you can see now, they shrunk up quite a lot just from the parboiling, so we won't need much water this time. One nice thing about nettles is they don't seem to shrink up quite as bad as other greens. So you don't need a half a pailful to get 2 servings of it. I just basically picked a handful just for the demonstration tonight, and I've pretty much almost still got a handful, just a little soggier. And now we'll put them on and do the final cooking. Just about done. All right, they're looking pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and drain them. Okay, all drained, and let them cool off for a minute. I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but we got some coyotes singing in the distance. Always love hearing that. They're out there living the same way they did for the last few thousand years. And we were out there like that once too. But we're going to try our nettles. Now, granted, if you were eating these at your house, you're just going to cook up some nettles to have with dinner. You could put some butter and salt, and they'd definitely be a little tastier. But even plain, they're not bad. Yep, done to a T.